Welcome to Canadian Women of the Outdoors, highlighting amazing Canadian women and small businesses. Brought to you by Revolution Armory. Join the revolution. True North Baits, superior quality fishing tackle. See what the fuss is about. The Decoy Daddy, Canada's newest silhouette and waterfowl accessories company, delivering premium products to Canadian hunters. And Hot Box Huts, Lake Simcoe's hottest ice fishing experience. Enjoy the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Canadian Women in the Outdoors. My name is Nicole, I'm your host. Before we get into it tonight, I just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Revolution Armory, True North Baits, Hot Box Huts, and the Decoy Daddy. So go give them a like and follow on Facebook and Instagram and all the social media. Show them some love. They've been awesome to me. So you definitely need to go give them a like and follow, subscribe, whatever social media outlet you're on, just go give them some love. You haven't seen her in a while. It's been a minute since she's been on with me as a co-host, but Miss Chrissy is back with us as my semi-permanent co-host tonight. So we have some questions with our guests tonight, and we were talking about this earlier. So welcome back, Chrissy.
Hi guys. Well, good to be back.
And now we're gonna get right into our guests. Our guest tonight has traveled the world in a kayak. So pretty awesome. So I'd like to introduce you guys to Jamie Stevenson.
Yes, Stevenson.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I was like, oh my God, is it, as I was saying that, I was like, is it Stephenson? Like, you just never know, right? And
yeah.
Most people think my last name is French, and it's not in any way, shape, or form. So
yeah, I would have guessed it was French when I first saw it. Yes.
Most people do. So welcome, Jamie. Super excited to have you. Like I said, I totally nerded out and creeped you quite a bit. Because what you do, and we're gonna get into it throughout the episode, but what you do is so fucking cool. And me and Chrissy being like your basic kayak anglers. Like, we have just a kayak and a rod and a wing and a prayer.
Honestly, though, that's all you need. You don't need all the fancy gear to get into kayak fishing. So,
well, I mean, maybe one day we'll get there. But so Tell us a bit about yourself, like where you're from, like what kind of got you into fishing. Obviously you didn't just start and you're like, oh, kayak, let's go. Like,
yeah, so again, my name's Jamie, and I grew up in southwestern Ontario on a farm in Merlin, Ontario. And I did not grow up fishing. Like a lot of the people that I compete against or fish with, they grew up fishing, a lot of them. I did not. So I actually got into fishing because of my ex-husband, actually. Nothing bad about him, but he actually got me into the sport. So I'm forever grateful to that for him. But he got me into fishing, and we fished for years together. But it wasn't until I got my first ice shanty that I really got the confidence. It was like a one-man shanty, a flip over. And it was the first time that I actually was like, you know what, I'm going to try fishing on my own. And that winter, I was all over the ice, drilling holes, figuring out how to catch the perch and the pike all on my own, unhooking the fish on my own. So it wasn't probably until my 30s that, because I'm about to turn 44, so it wasn't until.
Good for you, girl.
Yeah,
honestly, I was thinking you were like my age, so good for you. And I'm only 33, so good for you, girl.
Yeah, I'm about to turn 44 in a couple days, so yeah, so I got the confidence through ice fishing. And then that spring I was like, we had a boat. We had so we would go fishing on the boat all the time, but I wanted the independence of going out on my own. So I was like, well, maybe I'll get a kayak. Like, I can exercise, I can fish at the same time, and I'll just see what happens. And I bought a used Hobie Outback, a 2016 used Hobie Outback in 2018, I think the year was. And that was my first year fishing from a kayak. And when I got into that kayak, I was hooked. Like, I stopped fishing out of a boat. Like, I was no longer anything to do with the boat, could not care less fishing from a kayak. So that's kind of how I got into it from there. And then that very first year, I was like, well, this is kind of fun. And I had never fished for bass. I had on my own. I have never fished for walleye. And I was like, I am going to see if there's a fishing tournament to enter, and I'm going to enter a tournament. I signed up for this tournament in September, and I practiced all summer long. And I did my first kayak fishing tournament on Lake St. Clair with the Ontario Kayak Bass Trail, the Ontario Kayak Bass Trail. So that was
So
my first year.
so you essentially you just were ice fishing, so sitting there ice fishing, and then you're like, I'm gonna get a kayak, and then you're doing tournaments, or like,
Yeah. I know. I'm a very type A person. Like when I do something, it's almost like I'm all in. I can't just do something a little bit. I gotta like make it extreme, which is not necessarily a healthy thing, but
I mean, yeah, if you're gonna go big, right?
yeah, yeah.
Like, might as well, right? Um, sorry,
So
Chris, you
that
look like you have something to say.
No, I'm like invested in this. I'm
I
like,
was gonna say, so
this is
like,
awesome.
what ended up happening that very first tournament then?
yeah,
And
so I was
what was your target species for that very first tournament?
it was bass. So
Okay.
when you're kayak tournament fishing, your goal is to catch your 5 biggest bass, whether they be largemouth or smallmouth, and they measure them by length. I don't know how much you know about the tournament aspect of it,
Nothing.
but you are okay, cool. You're measuring your fish by length and not weight, and you're taking a photo of them on these measuring boards. And it's all GPS located so they can see where you're catching the fish, and there's all these different ways to make sure that people aren't cheating. So yeah, you try to catch your longest 5 fish. And obviously when I show up there, I'm like terrified and all on my own showing up to this tournament. And I remember someone that was like, are you here with anyone else? Like, is your boyfriend coming? And I'm like, no, it's just me.
Who needs a
And
man? You
yeah.
got this.
And so, but I'm not obviously I'm not the only woman that kayak fishes these tournaments. It's becoming more and more common. If it's something that you are looking to get into, don't be afraid just because you're a woman to get into these tournaments. There's lots of female anglers out there, especially now. But the first tournament, I was like, I caught 5 fish, so I filled my card. Like that's your goal is to catch your 5 fish and then upgrade length from there. So I was just that first tournament, I was blown away that I actually caught the 5 fish that day. And I think I finished 12th out of maybe 30 some anglers. So I was happy with that for the
Not
first time
bad.
ever.
So, like, is it a like? This is gonna sound probably like a stupid question. Like being on a kayak, do you have to have like a live well, or like, do you measure it
No,
and then catch and release?
it's catch and release. So it's
Okay.
actually a really great way to do a tournament. It's photo catch release. And
Okay.
you really have to make sure you have that photo first. You have to make sure that you're taking a photo and you're holding onto these fish. You have to make sure they're not going to jump over the side of the kayak like it's a bass. So
I mean, I seem to recall the one time when I was kayak fishing, I tournament set the hook and the bass came and almost hit me in the face.
oh
I
wow,
don't know. Do
nice.
you
That's a
remember?
hook set.
I mean, I think Chrissy, you were there, but you were on the other side of the little lake, and you just heard me and
I
Ellie
heard the
laughing.
screaming.
Yeah, and yeah, like you can hear it, like it was like whoosh, like right by my face, and I was like, oh, that may have been a little too aggressive, but so it's all, and obviously like there must be for these tournaments, do you have to have like a certain measuring tool? Like, do they provide you with that for those tournaments?
So
Like,
for certain tournaments they do. If it's just like the kayak bass trail, there are certain measuring devices that you are required to use. So right now all using the catch board is the big one. It used to be the hog trough, which was a plastic board, and now they've gone to the metal and aluminum boards.
so these tournaments, they're like specific to kayak anglers.
Yes, yes, it's
I
only
didn't
kayak fishing.
even I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so if you look up the Ontario Kayak Bass Trail, they have a really good Facebook page, a web page. There's also the Ontario Kayak Bass Masters. I have fished the Hobie Bass Open in the US, and I have been lucky to fish the very first kayak Pan Am games in Tennessee, where they have anglers coming in from South America, Mexico, all over, North America, South America. I've been very grateful to fish the Hobie Fishing Worlds twice, once in Sweden and once on Lake St. Clair last year.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really definitely something that I never would have thought me buying a kayak could have grown into this thing that it has. So my third year into kayak fishing, I am now on the Folk Marine Hobie fishing team. So Folk Marine is a kayak dealer in Etobicoke who sells kayaks like Hobie, Jackson, Old Town, all the big kayak brands. So it's kind of snowballed from there, but a lot of it just has to came from putting my head down, learning how to fish. I mean, I'm still learning how to fish. Like there's so much to learn out there when it comes to fishing. So
Chris, I think we're doing it wrong.
The only thing I catch is a buzz when I go fishing. That's about
There's
it.
nothing wrong with that. There's nothing
I'm
wrong
here
with
for a
that.
good time. That's about it. We're definitely now. My question is like, how large of bodies of water are you fishing in these tournaments? Like, I think that might be part of our problem, is because we've got a lot of tiny lakes, and yes, they are, they're full of fish, but they're not very big fish, which is fine.
Yeah.
But like, how large are these bodies of water?
So I live in southwestern Ontario. I live on a body of water called the St. Clair River. I don't know if you've heard of it,
Yep.
but so I'm live in a perfect area where I can drive to Lake Erie, Lake St. Clair, Lake Huron, be on the St. Clair River at night after work. So most of the time I am fishing bigger bodies of water. I have done a few tournaments up in the Kawartha Lakes, that area up there. Um, and those lakes, even though they're smaller, it's a whole different set of challenges, right? You have more boat
Yep.
traffic, you have more, like people out partying on boats. So, regardless of the body of water, there's always some sort of difference in it, right? So,
Yeah, for
So
sure.
you're at, like when you go out on like Lake Huron, Lake Erie, Lake St. Clair. Like, are you
mhm.
going like how far are you really going out on those lakes? Like, or
Yeah,
you kind
so
of
sometimes, like, obviously with the bigger lakes, you really, really have to pick your days carefully. You need to be prepared for anything that could go wrong, right? So quite a few miles out there. Like, probably on Lake Erie, I'll go 3, 5 kilometers out.
oh my God.
Lake St. Clair, I don't go as far because there's fishing close to shore, so I don't really have to go out that far.
Mhm.
But I do a lot of river fishing because I do live on the river.
So you must be in incredible shape. Um,
No, I
like
was when I first
arms.
started. No, I was when I first started, but not so much anymore. Like I do a lot of sitting, like I sit, like I work on a farm. So I do a lot of sitting, and then when I come home, I'm fishing and I'm doing a lot of sitting. So I have to make a point of keeping my muscle strength up, obviously, to lift the kayak in and out of the truck.
Now, your
Yep.
kayak, is it it's the paddle, or like the foot paddles, right?
The
I've seen.
pedals. Y-
Yes. Okay.
yeah. So I have two kayaks. So the one behind me, that is the Hobie Pro Angler 12. So this one has the pedal drive. I actually have it here if you want to see it. So it has the pedals, but it also the bottom pedals actually rotate. That's why, so it's a 360. So I can paddle kind of sideways, backwards, and forwards so that, and that's really important when you're fishing current or wind and you need to stay on position, because you have that ability to like change the nose of your kayak to be able to cast in your direction. Or when I'm walleye fishing, I do a lot of vertical jigging, so I really need to stay on a specific line when I'm fishing.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've ever seen them before. Like Hobie has this kind of pedals right here where
Okay.
they're kind of like the fins, and then the pedal drive rotates all the way around so you can change the direction of your kayak.
That
Wild.
is, so you don't have like an actual like paddle.
No, I've never paddled. Um, I almost bought a paddle kayak when I first, but I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna actually enjoy fishing, I'm gonna start with the pedal drive. And I just happened to find a cheaper used one um on Kijiji at the time. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to have the pedal drive to fish. I have fished against phenomenal anglers who have the paddle. Those paddlers can go just as fast as the pedalers if they're in good shape. I've seen it. I've tried to beat one of them. They're fast.
So then how long is your kayak?
So the 12 is they call it Pro Angler 12, but I think it's the exact measurement is 13 feet.
Holy shit.
That's
Yeah,
long.
so the Pro Angler 4, I would love to have the Pro Angler 14 because it has more room across, but it's
I
just
was
a
gonna say,
little bit.
what does the width look like? Do you have room to shuffle? Like, what is your rig? What is the setup of this kayak? Like, do you have room? Like, do you have electronics? Like, where do you keep your tackle and your tackle boxes? How many rods like do you run? Like, when you're doing tournaments, do you have different rods? Like, how many rods can it hold? Like, is your setups like you have like one for finesse fishing or a drop shot? Like, do you have different types of rods that you have on there?
Yeah, so the Pro Anglers, they actually have side rod storage because there is quite a bit of room. But I have a crate on the back where I have actually attached extra rod holders. So on average, if I'm fishing a tournament, I might bring up to 8 fishing rods with me. I'll probably use 6, maybe use 3. It all depends on the day, which
I
sounds
don't even
ridiculous
own 8
because
fishing rods.
I know it sounds ridiculous, right? And again, you
It's
don't
not
need all of
ridiculous.
that.
I'm not a tournament
No.
angler, so
I
So
just
yeah,
feel like if I did that, it would just end up in a tangled mess.
when I am done fishing a tournament, there is tackle spread everywhere. Like it's a disaster area for sure.
So on each of those rods, is there like literally a different type of setup on each of those rods?
Yeah, there will be like I might have, depending on the day, I might have a top water for morning. I'll have finesse drop shot, Ned rig. I'll have a chatterbait tied on. I might have a jerk bait tied on. I might have an extra drop shot rod if I feel like I'm going to be throwing a drop shot a lot, which I probably throw a drop shot too much, but
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
So
yeah. I've seen like the one picture you sent me, that walleye. Like, first of all, where was that? And second of all, you pulled that up in a kayak.
I
Like,
know. That's one of the best fish I caught in the St. Clair River. So
that was in a river.
that's in the river, yeah. So we're just heading into the spring kind of walleye run in the river for St. Clair and the Detroit River. And if you ever get the opportunity to like do a guided trip or in a boat, I highly recommend hitting one of those rivers up in the spring because you're gonna catch lots of walleye, you're gonna catch big walleye. So and so that's that walleye. So in the spring, we're mostly early spring, especially. I normally start walleye fishing March 1st, but it's been a little bit delayed this year. So we're vertical jigging. So it's heavy current, so you're using big jig heads and some sort of plastic body trailer and probably a stinger hook. I do tie on a stinger hook, treble hook quite a bit.
Wow.
Like, have you ever like tipped over in the kayak, or is it?
Luckily, I have not. I try to be very careful. This time of year, I wear a dry suit. So if you're
Oh,
getting into
okay.
kayak fishing, there's a lot of safety things to consider. You will
Yes.
never see me in a kayak without a life jacket on, even if I'm in 2 feet of water. Because most of the time I'm fishing by myself. I would say 98% of the time I fish alone. So I'm always in a life jacket, cold water, I'm in a dry suit. I've never tipped. I know lots of people who have. Stuff just happens sometimes. Like if you're leaning too far over, I mean, the pro anglers are really, really stable, but that doesn't mean you're not going to tip one. It doesn't mean you're not going to get hit in a storm and get swamped. Like you got to be prepared. Luckily, I have
Sorry.
not tipped. I haven't
Like
tipped, luckily.
you really have to watch weather,
hmm
especially on those bigger lakes, right? Like,
Absolutely, because Lake Erie especially can turn on a dime.
oh,
And
Oh.
the waves on Lake St. Clair, even though it's a smaller lake, they tend to come closer together and hit you more often, where on Lake Erie and Huron, it's more of like a slow motion. So I really pick my weather carefully. I don't take risks. I'd like to think that I don't take risks anyway.
I'm not friends with Lake Huron. I don't like Lake Huron.
I don't have as much as experience as Lake Huron. I want to get into it more, but it does seem a really daunting place. Like it's
Twice. The first time I went fishing there, I ended up ralphing over the side of the boat.
yeah.
I caught a fish immediately after. But it was very, very rolly, and it was not. Lake Huron is very, very sketchy. I find.
Yeah, so
Anyway.
I get seasick as well in a boat, but
I'm not the only one. Woo-hoo!
Yeah,
No.
but I do not get seasick in a kayak. So
Yeah, no.
Okay.
yeah, so that's a big game changer for me, because when I was fishing out of a boat, I would not like going out on those rough days, and those are the best days sometimes. So
Fair.
Yes.
What is absolute must have that you take with you? Can be safety equipment, can be tackle, can be whatever. Just what is the absolute must have that you always take with you?
Aside from a life jacket.
Aside from a
Yeah,
life jacket.
that's a good question. So I do run. You asked me earlier about electronics, and I do run electronics. I have a Lowrance unit right now with down scan, side scan, sonar. I don't have live scope, live target yet. I haven't.
Yeah, I like that.
It's one of those things where I think if you buy it, you really have to dedicate the time to learning how to use it. So honestly, electronics, you don't need them, but do I want to use the electronics? Yes. So that's probably the number one thing that I'm always going to bring. Other than that, that's a good question, but it's also a tough question. So yeah, like tow ropes, things like that, just in case you have to get pulled in or something goes wrong. Tackle, I probably have too much tackle in my boat.
No such thing.
Pliers. Yeah. Okay,
No
good.
such thing.
Good, because if you saw behind me, it's like all like tackle boxes and like walls of tides. It's ridiculous, but
Tell that to my partner. Apparently I have too much. I'm like, that's not true.
it's never enough.
I beg to differ.
Well,
we unload and it's like, whose tackle box is this? Nicole's. Okay, whose tackle box is this? Also Nicole's. Okay, whose tackle box is also Nicole's?
And then the sad part is I only ever use one thing.
I am similar to that. I'm getting worse actually by only like using one or two things. Whereas when I first started, I really made an effort of like, okay, this year I'm only gonna try to use the chatterbait, and I'm gonna keep throwing the chatterbait, or I'm gonna learn how to throw a jerkbait. And that's honestly how I learned how to fish. I watched videos and I was like, all right, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna practice almost every day of the week.
I always say I'm gonna do that, and then I don't catch anything, and then I'm just like, I'm gonna go back to old reliable, and I do, and then I start catching fish, and then the girls get mad. And even like we just had the Sportsman show, and I picked up some new bait from one of my sponsors, and my partner was like, why you're not going to use any of that? Like you're not, like, you can try it, you might try it for like 5 casts, and then you're going to switch to your sticks that you use all the time, because I throw most people know them as Senkos, but True North Baits calls them mini sticks, and that's what I throw, and I catch a shitload of fish on it, like big fish too.
And there's so many people that are just like you. They're throwing them, and you know what? I don't throw them enough for whatever reason, and I know I should. I know I should.
Chrissy can attest to.
Yeah.
Attest to it. But you should throw them. Throw the sticks. They work.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I have all this tackle, and I use one thing. So when in like your tackle, you said you drop shot a lot?
I do drop shot a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're drop shotting, like what are you putting on that hook? Like are you putting like a minnow type thing, or?
Yeah, so I use a lot of flatworms. I do have some of my tackle here. So I do throw a lot of Angler's Choice. He calls them the kill shots, and they're like a nice flat bait, and I catch a lot of fish on these things, and they come in tons.
Really pretty.
Tons of different colors. Yeah, I love that color.
See, I say that, I'm like, I want it, but am I going to use it? Probably not.
You should. And
I don't drop shot enough. I want to drop shot more, but I don't drop shot enough. So when you're drop shotting, then is that for bass or is that for your walleye?
You
Or
can definitely do it with walleye, but mostly I am drop shotting for bass.
mhm,
Another Canadian company, because I do use a lot of Canadian
as
baits,
you should.
as I should, and limestone lures. Actually, these ripple worms. This is what I caught. You were talking about that big walleye I caught.
Yeah.
I actually caught it on one of these, and it's like a
That's
black blue flake, and I love these darker colors too,
yeah.
right?
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, those are my main two drop shot. Oh, another good one, but not Canadian, spark shads. And a lot of people, I don't know how many people actually drop shot these, but I drop shot them all the time. And that is a smallmouth killer. They
Oh
love that
yeah.
thing. Yeah, I've
So
caught a lot of big.
do you prefer smallmouth or largies?
That is, I go out definitely largemouth fishing for fun. Like
Yeah.
largemouth fishing is so much fun, but there's nothing beats the bite of a huge smallmouth, like fighting at the end of that line, right? So it's like
It's my
sometimes
favorite.
but then you have those days where you're smallmouth fishing where it's like nothing like goes right, and
Yeah.
they're spitting the hook back at you. And sometimes largemouth fishing for me is just relaxing, going out there fun. I don't care how big they are, if they're 12 inches, 15 inches, 18 inches. It's just fun. Where smallmouth fishing, that can get me upset sometimes.
I feel
Fair.
I do feel that. Like sometimes when they spit right at you and you're just like, wow, like you're a dick. Like
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
I've had it happen where they're like right by the boat, they jump up right by the boat and then they spit
And
it
you're
at
just
you
like,
and then they just see you later. Like just so mean. So are you for your like casting then, are you using a bait caster or a spinning rod?
Both. I use a mixture.
Mhm.
I do really love using bait casters, chatterbait. When I'm pike fishing, I probably only use bait casting equipment.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of the more for largemouth, Texas rig, that kind of thing. Definitely bait casters. And then for walleye fishing and finesse, um, I would use spinning. But I see a lot of guys walleye fishing with using bait casters, and
Yeah.
I know guys who will only use bait caster even if it is finesse. So do think it really is personal preference. I don't think there's one or the other, but I mean, bait casters definitely have their place.
I can't cast a bait caster to save my life. I've tried multiple times and I it does that knot thing and
Yeah, it can be frustrating for sure. Some of the reels that I use Daiwa reels, and I find
oh, that's my
that they're
friend.
a little bit easier when you're just learning. And I don't know
Daiwa?
about you, but I always throw left-handed bait casters. Like, there's a lot of people that use the right and then switch, and I just don't get that. Just you buy a left-handed bait caster and you're
I don't
fine.
actually know what I throw.
couldn't tell you.
I'm gonna have to think about that. I don't know.
I couldn't
Yeah.
tell you.
Because I don't really pay attention. I just do it. I don't
And
actually think about that.
And then I know a lot of tournament anglers that will purposely teach themselves to cast both hands
Hmm.
because you're more efficient that way, but I don't get that serious into it, so no.
Um, just going back to your rig for a second, because I was curious
Yeah,
about this. When you're doing big waters and stuff like that, like, do you have like maybe a like, do you have a little motor on your kayak at all, like just in case?
I do have a motor now. 2 years ago, I always said I'm not getting a motor, I'm not getting a motor, and then now that I have a motor, I can't imagine going back because and you hear people on the water talking about you because they forget how far their voices carry. And they're like, look at that girl. Like, why doesn't she just buy a boat? And you're not wrong. But
You
when you catch a
thumbs up to them.
muskie, yeah, when you catch a muskie that close to the water, or you catch like a trophy smallmouth that close to the water, you're never going to want to go back in a boat. That's my personal preference. Is a boat nice? Yes, it is nice to have, but there's something about for me, the challenge of being in a kayak, being that
So,
close to the water.
you've got a muskie in a kayak?
Yes, yes, I have. Both on Lake St. Clair. I want to get more into it.
You've caught a Lake St. Clair muskie in a kayak.
Yes, but I'm not like I need to get more into it. I've bought a bunch of gear, but I haven't focused on it yet. And I really want to, but it's also daunting.
How much of a
I've
fight was that?
so one of the ones that I caught on the St. Clair River, when I hooked into it, I was like, "Oh, I got a bass on the line." And then all of a sudden I look over and I see this monster jump all the way out of the river.
I'd
And
shit.
I was like,
I'd throw my rod and be like, nope, you can have it.
by the time I had it reeled in, I was like probably 1.5 kilometers down river, if not two. And I was screaming. It was a Sunday morning, and I was just like, my heart was pounding. And then I couldn't fit it in the net because it was too big. So I
Well, yeah.
don't have a full picture. I have a picture of its head, and that's it. And then I had to like unhook it on the side of the boat and just watch it swim away. And didn't even take it out of the water.
I wouldn't know how would you even like I'd be like, I'm gonna tip. I'm going to tip. I don't care how sturdy you tell me this thing is, I'm going in with it and it's gonna eat me. That's what's gonna happen.
I promise you the kayaks are more sturdy than you think. Like I can stand up in that thing. I can stand up and cast. And yeah. But yes, I did get the motor. I have a Newport NK 180, I believe it is. And it's a game changer. Like it's more efficient. Like if you only have 1 day a week to go fishing, it's more efficient because you can hit more spots in a day. Or if you're fishing the river, it, it takes me a long time to pedal back up river. Like
So
it's
you don't
great.
like drop and then like move your vehicle and then you have to actually come back up river when you're done?
Yeah, most of the time I don't kind of drop and go down. Most of the time I will just like launch in one spot and go back to that spot.
Oh my god. Like that's a lot of paddling. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, I guess if you have a motor, then that's kind of like
Yeah,
because like fighting current, like that again would be my worry is you're fighting the current, right?
yeah, it's big current too. You really have
Yeah.
to pick and choose your spots in the river because the current changes depending on where you are. So if you are wanting to attempt a big river for the first time, have a plan
Mhm.
because once there was someone on the US side that messaged me that said that they tried it and pedaling like and with a pedal drive and they were like, You must be in incredible shape because I don't know how you did that. I couldn't." So if you're doing it for the first time, make sure you have a backup plan to for someone to pick you up downriver or getting back to the boat launch.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
that's pretty intense. So now you said Sweden, so you're a worldwide kayak angler.
Yeah, Sweden was a humbling experience, but it was one of the best experiences. Getting to fish the Hobie Fishing Worlds is a huge honor.
So
And
how did you get to like that point? Like did you just win a bunch of tournaments and then they invited you or like
honestly, I've never won a tournament.
oh
And I mean, winning a tournament is not an easy thing to do. It's not something, I mean, there's guys that can win them all the time. I'm mostly a middle of the packer at this point. Like we do weekly tournaments during the summer and I'm not bad at those. I've finished second, but I've never finished first. So, but I was I think part of it is just like showing up at tournaments, meeting people, trying. I am part of the Hobie fishing team, so that has part of it. Um Social media is a big one too, and just networking with people like
that's
you.
how I
Like,
found you. Like that's
yeah.
I felt like a stalker and I'm really sorry cuz
I stalked you
I'm
too afterwards. I was like, oh, look at all these fishing pictures.
I'm always like, whenever I invite guests on, like, because I go full on stalker status, I'm like going through and like looking at their stuff, and then I approach them and I'm like, yeah, so I really creeped you. Do you want to come on my podcast? But like, I just found it so fascinating with you because like kayak fishing, like, especially like me and Chrissy are both kayak. We are not as intense. We
Nope.
need to up our game apparently.
I struggle with a dock rod and my tiny little tackle box. That's
We need to up our game. So it's really cool for us to hear about this stuff and the fact that I didn't know there was a whole kayak tournament world,
Mhm.
which is super cool. And again, the fact that you've been to the US to compete, like,
Yeah,
was
so
that
you
just
can You can look up the Hobie Fishing Worlds on YouTube. They actually film like a whole show while we're there, and they interview a lot of us, and they kind of like go through the week, and you get to meet anglers from all over the world. So now I have friends in Singapore. I have friends in Denmark, in Sweden, and the USA is like huge, obviously huge into kayak fishing, and it's just it's not even for me tournaments, and I don't fish as many as I used to since COVID, but
Yeah.
for me, tournaments is not about winning. Like, yeah, anyone wants to win, right? But I'm not that competitive. I'm there, one, to fish new waters because that forces you to learn something.
Mhm.
If you want to get better at fishing, go fish a lake you've never been to before because that's a humbling experience. And every time you're going to learn something. So
Mhm.
even though I'm not winning, I'm learning something every time. So that's probably my main takeaway is like, for tournament fishing is don't expect to go in there to win. Don't worry about where you place, worry about learning something, and then you're going to be a better angler at the end of the day. So, like, I'm there to meet people, I'm there to have fun, I'm there to learn something and maybe be a better angler at the end of the day. Um, but yeah, tournament fishing is humbling. It's like you have some bad days, that's for sure, but also at the end of it, you're so glad that you did it.
That's awesome.
Solid advice. Solid advice.
Yeah. Yeah, so
So
if
what?
you're ever thinking about it, just jump in. Don't even think of it. Just do it.
Well, like now that I know that there is kayak angling, I might start like really looking into it. Like
Yeah,
just
the tournaments on Ontario are huge. Like they're getting when they first started, they were getting like 30 anglers, 50 anglers. Now it's 100. Now it's over 100 sometimes in a tournament. So if
may need to
you're
upgrade my kayak, but
I've seen people fishing in, like a $500 kayak on the side of the road. Like, yeah, like you
yeah.
honestly, like, is it nice to have all the fancy stuff? Yeah, like,
So
but
my little $200 aquaholic kayak that is all of 8 feet long.
honestly, I fished a tournament on Rondo Bay, and I had this guy come up to me at the end of the tournament, and he was paddling, and he had this tiny little kayak, and he asked me how my day was, and it was the first time I ever met him. His name's Antoine, and now Antoine is one of the top kayak anglers, I would say, in my opinion, in Canada. He's fishing the kayak Bass Nation tournament on Lake Fork this week, trying to take home the championship, and
Holy
that's
shit.
how that's how
Wow.
he started. Like, so don't ever discount yourself just because you have a smaller kayak.
That's impressive. So
That
back to
is
Sweden
impressive.
though. So when you were over in Sweden, like were you fishing like the ocean or like was it like again,
Yeah, that's a
I'm
great
not
question.
traveled. I'm not traveled. I'm terrified of planes. I don't
That's a
even know
great question.
does Sweden have lakes? Like
They have, I think
and what were
Sweden,
you targeting in Sweden?
we were targeting pike and perch. So over there they have the big perch, like they kind of look like our perch but on steroids. They're like big as bass, and
Wow.
so pike and perch. And every day we fished 5 days in a row, which is exhausting.
Oh,
We had to catch 3 pike and 2 perch. And yeah, I failed miserably at the pike. I think I went in a little bit too confident because over here it's like, oh yeah, pike, yeah, we can catch a pike anywhere. But over there, I did not have that experience. So,
huh.
yeah, and yeah, so we're fishing an inland lake, and I think it's one of the biggest lakes in Europe, but I could be wrong. Beautiful. It honestly feels like a Northern Ontario lake. That's what it felt like.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very beautiful. And, the city we stayed in was beautiful. We were in a hotel that we were able to walk to the boat launch every day. You get ready in the morning. They kind of have like their morning meeting, and then you're out there for, we'll say, 7 hours, trying to get your 5 fish.
Wow. Did you it's now to go over there, did you take your own kayak and have it shipped over, or did they provide kayaks for you? Like
So
like what gear did you take with you, or was like everything there?
So for the Hobie Fishing Worlds, they do provide everyone the same kayak, the same electronics. So you have to use everything on the kayak that they provide. You're not allowed to add anything extra. So the
Okay.
only thing that you show up with is your fishing rods and your tackle.
Ah.
So everyone, because there's some pretty incredible anglers that I still can't believe that I had the opportunity to fish against that come to these tournaments. And so they kind of make it so that everyone's on a level playing field. And but I've been to the kayak, the Pan Am Bass Championships in the US, and we brought our own kayaks there.
Yeah, probably a little bit easier because if you're going in the States, you can kind of drive there, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you went to Sweden, then you had to like load up all your gear and ship that over, and
We had some people shipped rods over. I actually bought the cheapest travel rods, like 3-piece rods that fit into a tube that I could find. And then
okay.
I had my own reels and did a little bit of research, bought some lures. And when you're over there, they kind of like the locals will kind of give you some tips and help you out, and like they'll have tackle shops nearby that you can go to and buy more stuff if you want.
So how many people were in that tournament? That was Worlds?
Yeah, world tournament. Oh man, I should know this, but I feel like there's like 30 to 35 people,
Holy
but I
shit!
can't
And
remember
you
off
were
the top of my
among them.
head.
That is fucking cool.
I know it's sometimes I think I have imposter syndrome because it's like, who am I, right? Like I'm just a girl who decided she was going to start kayak fishing in 2018,
So
but
were you representing Canada then? Like
yeah,
you were?
representing Canada.
Oh,
And
girl.
in Sweden, they had 3 people on Team Canada. So my teammates, Rich Offner and Tim Percy, we went to Sweden together. And then when we did Hobie Fishing Worlds on Lake St. Clair last year, they actually upped the number of Canadians, and it was the biggest team ever. And I believe there was 5 of us.
Wow.
So yeah.
And
That's still impressive.
This all just started because of ice fishing.
I
And
know, and
now
I'm buying a plastic boat.
Ice fishing is a gateway drug, I'm telling
Yeah,
you.
it is. I love ice fishing. I could do it forever. I can't wait to retire and just do it all the time.
and then it's so crazy how like yeah, you just started ice fishing by yourself and now you're traveling the world as like a competitive representing Canada kayak angler, like, and you're on my show. Look at me go.
Yeah.
I must have done something right. Like that in itself is so cool. Like, and again, I didn't even know I creeped you, but I didn't like go that hardcore. Like I had no idea you had traveled and did worlds, and I just thought you were this badass woman that had a sick kayak and like did all the cool shit fishing. Like I had no idea how in depth actually cool you were. Like
Oh,
that's
cool.
like that is just it's so fascinating because again, I didn't even know there was tournament kayak angling. Like I had no clue that even existed.
Yeah, you guys should look into it for sure.
Oh, we're not good enough for that.
No, don't. I'm not that good either. Like if I was that good, I'd be winning tournaments. It's one of those things. Like I don't go to as many Ontario tournaments as I used to. Like when COVID hit, I mean, being a female angler is a little bit harder. Like it's expensive to travel, and when COVID hit, and the hotel rooms went to like $300 a room, that was too expensive for me, and I didn't have anyone to room with. The people that I used to room with, they all bought trailers, and then they were doing more of the US tournaments than the Canadian ones, so it just became a little bit more expensive for me. So I wanted to take a few years off. I mentioned that I was married. I'm going through a divorce, so I just needed a couple of years to get my I'm not gonna go broke fishing kayak tournaments. So I just, hotel rooms are starting to go back down. Camping is more of an option for me now. I do have a trailer. So I'm hoping to get back more into the Canadian tournaments, the Ontario tournaments, in the next probably 2 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But you do a lot of like just stuff for fun for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like
To me, that's number one. To
yeah.
me, that is way more important to me than kayak, like going tournament fishing. Like tournament fishing can be mentally grueling, and I'm super positive in the aspect that if I have a bad day, I don't care. I'll go home, have a beer.
Uh-oh.
But fun fishing,
Did we
I
lose
just
ya?
think, oh, I'm still here. You got me?
Okay, yeah. No, yeah, we're
Okay.
good.
I want to do more fishing in my local waters. I want to learn how to catch. I want to get great at rainbow trout fishing. I want to get great at muskie fishing. So there's like all these worlds of opportunities outside of fishing for bass that I want to start doing. So it's like that too, right? It's not just the money. It's like, there's so much great fishing right here.
Yeah. The musky fishing in itself, like, that's cool as shit. Especially because you have, like, St. Clair right there. And that's, like, musky capital, like between that and the Kawarthas, that's like musky gold right there. Like,
Yeah.
I would love to catch a St. Clair muskie. I don't know if I would do it in a kayak. I'd probably shit myself.
You're really close to them, right? Like you can I don't have very big hands, so
that's I was gonna say, like, that in itself is terrifying. Like, I've seen like kids get bit by those things. Like, that's kind of scary. Like,
no thanks.
Even so, we live up near the Saugeen River there, so we're on the Saugeen, and like we'll go swimming and do like paddle tubes, but then you see people pull out some of the muskies from the Saugeen River, and they're huge, and we're like, we just swam in that.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
It's kind of terrifying. Like, I would love to catch a muskie on the Saugeen.
That sounds fun.
Don't know if I'd want to do it out of a kayak. Like, that, not my kayak anyway. I'd probably tip it.
Not mine. Definitely not mine.
I'd probably tip it, but that's really cool. We are actually close to hitting that little bit of an hour there. Do you have any like final comments, remarks, anything you want to let people know? Where can we find you on social media for those that don't currently stalk you and follow you like I do?
So my main place that I post is on Instagram. So you can find me under Northern Kayak Angler, YouTube, Northern Kayak Angler, pretty much anywhere.
You are on YouTube.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't post that many videos. But yeah, I am there. TikTok, Northern Kayak Angler. So that's where you guys can find me.
Cool. Now another place I can stalk you. TikTok, go me.
Yeah, and last tips, I would say again, keep it simple when you're just first starting. Like, you don't have to have all the 8 fishing rods to go out. You don't have to have the best electronics. Just go out and have fun. Like, just buy a cheap kayak or borrow one from someone and just stay close to shore, wear a life jacket and have fun. Like, there's like kayak fishing really can, like, you meet so many great people. It changes your life. It changed my life. So
yeah. Chris, did you have any final last minute questions, comments?
The question I generally ask anyone that I am on for is, if there was nothing holding you back, is there a place anywhere in the world that you would love to take your kayak and go fishing? Like, bucket list place to do it?
Yeah, bucket list. It's you'll have to look it up. It's, I believe, Los Buzos in Panama. There's a guy who does kayak fishing charters in Panama. I have some friends that have gone, and you can catch giant, like, that saltwater fishing. So you're catching like marlin and rooster fish and all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, although it's terrifying at the same time, like kayak, it's terrifying. Yeah, so look them up. It's like kayak fishing in Los Buzos, Panama, I believe it is. And that would be my bucket list trip. And my friend Rich went for his 60th birthday. Fortunately, I had to work, so I didn't get to go on that trip. But
there's still time. There's still time.
Pesky work, yeah. You're still young. You got time. Like,
yeah.
pesky work. Well, it was awesome chatting with you today, Jamie. I really appreciate you coming on.
And I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
About all that stuff. Like, I learned new things today that I had no idea about. So, and I mean, I'm learning every day apparently, but yeah, we really appreciate your time, and it was really nice to chat with you. Do you ever go, like, were you at the Toronto Sportsman Show this past weekend? Or?
I didn't go this past weekend. Okay. I wish I had have gone. Every year I don't go. I'm like, I wish I had gone. And I do love going because you get to meet all kinds of new people, and you interact with so many people on social media that you don't get to see on a regular basis, but you talk to them all the time, and then you get to meet them at those shows. So yeah.
Well, that's really cool. Well, one day I may have to come down there and have you show me a thing or two with the kayak fishing.
Heck so yeah, I got an extra kayak, so anytime.
That would be really, really cool. Again, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Again, big shout out to our sponsors, True North Baits, Revolution Armory, Decoy Daddy, and Hotbox Huts. And remember, the outdoors belongs to no one, so get out there, hunt, fish, forage, explore, and have a great time. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.